20. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the deep session of SIG Apps. Before we start, I want to ask, have you attended SIG Apps intro yesterday? Supposing you already know what is SIG Apps and where it is used. If no, would you please raise your hand? So first of all, I will briefly introduce what is SickApps. It is responsible for workload API daemon set, deployment default set in Kubernetes, how to deploy in Kubernetes and run your application. All of the relevant APIs are taken charge by SickApps. What is SIG? SIG is SIG, Special Interest Group. In Kubernetes, it is a way of organization or categorization. 没有老外戴耳机吧? In the intro session, I mentioned that we hold meetings every week, also have discussions online or offline. You can write us emails or Slack to talk with us. And I haven't prepared any slides for the session. I would like to open the floor for further discussion on any issues relating to SickApps or Kubernetes contribution. Regarding development, use, any questions, you're welcome to talk about in this session. Please use your microphone when raising questions, or I'll repeat yours. Anyone who would like to ask questions? I have a question on SickApps nothing scope. I'm managing path layer applications. An important topic is data recovery in a multi-database center and flow distribution. Ramp up data center. It's application path layers responsibility to do this. Networking and infrastructure layer are also included, but I haven't seen SickApps content such as multi-cluster, because an application is distributed in multiple data centers, but there's only one endpoint exposed. So do you have any plan to extend the scope for SickApps? We haven't planned a plan to extend SickApps scope to multi-cluster because we have another SIG called multi-cluster. All the discussions were in that application. SickApps is dedicated to developers or operators' user experience, or the tool that they can directly use, or the API they can directly use. I don't know whether I answered your question. If you are interested in multi-cluster, or you have any questions, you can go to multi-clusters SickApps. Application management itself is a very large scope. The current scope is around one cluster, and even only one, there are multiple release management issues. Okay, thank you for your answer. Any other questions? Or we can have a discussion on SickApps next direction or development. On SickApps, there are some SIG projects, either founding members of SickApps or raise those issues, or contributors who are interested in SickApp discussion. If they have relevant tools available, they can demo in the meeting, and afterwards they can also discuss whether to donate the project to SickApp or not. The advantage of doing this is that your project will have a higher visibility, and also you can enjoy other people's contribution to your projects. The current SickApps project is called Application CRD. Have you heard of it? Application CRD. Do you know what is CRD? Yes. CRD is Customer Resource Definition. In Kubernetes, there are a lot of APIs such as daemon set deployment. You can also create your own API. For example, machine, an API called machine. So by using YAML file or YAML format, you can set it to API server saying that I wrote CRD, resource definition. I call my API machine. The API group, what is the API group? After sending it to API server, it will be recognized by API server, and kubecontrol command line tool is a good way to access this API. Application CRD is based on this concept. What it does is that you can define what is an app. And it's a self-defined API to manage your application. The merit, what does it mean by managing the application? If you deploy a WordPress, then there will be a web server and a deployment and database behind. So you also need the outsiders to be connected to the WordPress. So you need this kind of service. Without application CRD, how do you view these three concepts? Control get servers, stateful set are the solution. If you want to install all the application, you can control delete each resource. If you do a web UI or dashboard, how are you going to show the interaction or the relation between the three apps? In your UI, you will write which resources does the app use. Through application CRD, these resources are bonded. When you get these resources, the application icon can be put in the application CRD, and you can show the icon in your UI, or the users can see the app in your UI, and they will know who is the maintainer of the app, what is the description of it, and if they would like to be supported, who can they resort to? So it's more like a central resource. Anyone can upload the information relating to this application. The users can also have access to this information. Now the application CRD is the place to put information. There is not a controller behind. So we're doing some automation. So if you want to do application controller, so apart from application description, all the concept I saw, who are the developers and icons, you can also view its status. You can find the resources concerning all these applications like stateful deployment, healthiness, and return the status to application status. So you can show the status in the kube control or web UI. So that's what SickApps would do next.
那另外呢 Helm 大家知道 Helm 吗？
Do you know Helm?
应该大家都知道，它就是 Kubernetes Apps 的package manager。
It's a package manager of Kubernetes Apps.
Helm 现在目前的版本是2。
Helm 2 version 2.
Helm 的 developer 呢，他们正在开发
Developer
第3版本的
is working on the version 3 of
会
Helm.
改掉 Helm chart 的
He will also change the Helm charts templating format.
它原本是用
Originally, it used Go template. Later, it also
做 parameter
supports other parameters templating
那另外它也会
approaches.
把 tiller 拿掉。
Also, it will remove
就是
tiller.
你原本在现版本的 Helm 里面，你做你做你的 Helm chart 的 upgrade downgrade
Helm track upgrade or
背后
downgrade.
有一个RPC 的
There is an RPC server
放在
bound
旁边，但是它不是一个
beside it,
Kubernetes
but
native
it's
的 server。
not a Kubernetes native
为了
server.
它为了要可以帮你做 upgrade downgrade，
In order to upgrade or
基
downgrade,
本上在从 security 的角度来说，
from a security perspective, it's like a root server because it has all the authorities. It should install all the resources, so all the settings is quite risky in terms of security, so in the next version of Helm, it will be removed. In the next version, we hope application CRD support could be put in Helm 3.
那以上就是目前关于
Currently,
application
CRD and Helm
更新
related
不知道大家
updates.
有没有
So much for the updates for them.
做 Kubernetes， 比如说 workload API 使用上
When using workload API, do you have any concerns or feedbacks? Or when you use Helm or other Kubernetes apps,
上的一些 feature request 或是
do you have any questions concerning feature requests?
我问您就是你前面讲的就是未来的就是 App 层面的发展那一块的话，就是把底层的
So you talk about the SickApps future, and you mentioned like managing all together and reflect them on your app. And when, at what time will you realize all that? because all the functions you've mentioned currently are quite simple, not appropriate for application. How about these functions?
印象中那个现在
Well,
应该已经是 beta 了。
as far as I know, they are
如
now
果要
in
让
the
它
beta
stable 的
version.
话，
If you want to make them more stable,
要等到明年。
maybe we need
那它现在
to
实际
wait
上是
for a
用
while
的
until
是
next year,
比如
because
说
now, in terms of their
在
actual application,
在 Google Cloud 里面，
for
像
example, in
我
Google
是在 Google
Cloud,
Cloud 的，
because
在
I
Google Cloud 里面
at Google Cloud,
每个你的 Cloud 会有一个 UI， 可以
well,
让你看
in
这
our
个东
cloud
西。
there's a
然后它
UI,
你如果点进去
and if you
就
click on the
看我的
UI
Kubernetes cluster
and
的
you
话，
want to look
就
at
会
your
秀出
Kubernetes
cluster 里面
cluster,
所有的
and
app。
it will show
那
all the apps installed your Kubernetes
它比较像
cluster,
是一个给
and
你
it is
用
very
来
much like a
方便你在 UI 或者是在
a facilitator for you
快速可以
to
看到你的
quickly
apps， 管理你的 apps。
look at and manage your apps
但
in
比
the
较不是
UI
说
on the
太复杂
Kubernetes,
的应用。
but it is not that complicated application. So not that complicated application. Why do you position as such? Because, you know, at Kubernetes you have all of those base, and for Helm there are like those package management tools. And now, do you have any more complicated concepts to manage these applications? Why do you name it not that complicated application?
填补一
Well,
些
I mean,
现有
it is mainly to
使用上做不到的事，比如说
filling
大家
the
知
blanks
道
for
Kubernetes 的
existing
garbage collection
apps. Do you know how the garbage collection of Kubernetes run?
如果不知道的话，我解释一下。
I can
所
explain
以
that for you.
garbage collection
Well, for
意思就是
garbage collection,
每
it
个
means
resource 之间你可以指定它们
between
之间
each
的
resource you could
比如说 deployment
appoint their interrelation. For example, deployment will create a replica set, and the deployment can also
是那些 replica set
assign
的 owner。
itself to be the owner of all the replica sets.
的用意就是让
And this is
Kubernetes
to
的 garbage collector 在删掉东西的时候可以
enable the garbage collector of the Kubernetes
我删掉
to delete
父母就把他的
parent
小孩一起删掉。
as well as the kid at the same time. It sounds kind of strange, but it is like, you know, you delete the root and then the children will be deleted as well.
那你 install 一个 app，
And when you install an app,
他们之间
all the
的关
resource
系是松散的，因为你没有
all the resources are loosely
包在一起，所以 application
dispersed,
是为了解决
nothing to integrate them. So application CRD is created to solve this problem. Okay, then for application CRD, is it to describe or describe everything when creation of an app needs it? But how about managing these applications? Can we control them from the bottom? No.
你可以把它想成把所有的 resource 包在
You can imagine it to package all the resources, bundle all the resources together. It is easy for you to look at them and delete them, but if you want to update the resources, you need to update the bottom resources, not through application CRD, not through updating application CRD, because for application CRD, it has no controller. If you update there will be no reaction. Okay, so even for the future, if in the application it deploys like 5 applications, for example, for application servers, not storage, but you cannot update it to 3 or 4 through application CRD. You need to change the deployment. You're right. But if you think this sounds not reasonable, or you think you have a better solution, you could propose and then send your feature request, and we can improve it based on your suggestion. Okay, how many people are doing the SIG Apps now? I'm not sure about the exact number. I did not refer to the actual number of people, but in SIG App, the number of people really developing API would be like a dozen. I have several questions. While we talked about application CRD, if I delete the CRD and the relevant resources will also be cleaned, yes. But if I want to create them, I need to create them separately or just the CRD. You need to create them separately. So you mean apply apps in a YAML package, including all the resources? Yes.
那看起来它就是一个包裹，一个应用的一个包裹，然后有一些
So
metadata 来
it would be like an application package with some metadata. Yes.
几个 face 的这应
But
该是一个
I noticed
要
there
要
is
完
like
成
a
的。它这个也是会
phase
去更新它
and not completed,
多
but
几次嘛，就
will
是
it be updated? Will there be a watch mechanism? Well, for that phase,
目前呢，你需要自己写一个 controller，
you
然
now
后
need
去
to write a controller
去
yourself
更新你的 face。比如
and
说
then
我
update
现
the
在我
phase.
想要写一
For
个
example,
go
now
free
I want
去
to
install 我的
write
app，
a tool
那
to
其中
install the
一
app,
块呢，我可以透
and
过 application CRT 去把我
part of
的
them could
资料
be
写在里面，然后给你的 UI 或者 CLI 去读。
making
但
use
是
of application
application
CRD to
CRT 本
writing
身
the
没有包
data
含那
into
个
there for
controller，
your
所以那
UI
个
to
贷
read.
款你要
But
自己
application
写，就是你
CRD,
自己去探索。
CRD itself
现
does not
在
include a controller. You need to write the controller by yourself. So, for example, the install is finished,
但
and
是
you
未
need to
来呢，
update
我会
all
加
the
一个
application CRD phase.
controller，
But in the
那那
future,
个
we may
controller
add
就
an
可以帮你
application
做
CRD controller into it, and the controller will help you manage some stuff.
So 问题是 application 如果要
So
做升
you
级，
mean
然后不同
if you want to
application 之间有不
update
同的
application,
我要怎么
and for different applications, they might have different sequences for updating, or what? I mean, any updating strategy between different layers. You mean for the same application, for each resource, they need to be updated in different orders? Yes. Well, I believe you need to make use of a concept of the operator. Do you know about operator?
所以 operator 呢，就
Well,
是它
operator
用
is
了包括CRD 还有
like
controller 的概
using
念，它其
CRD
实
and
也
controller
就是一个
concepts,
controller，
but actually
只
it
是
is
那
a
个 controller
controller,
跟 deployment
but
controller 或者
it
是 stateful set controller 不一
is
样的，
different
就
from the
是
deployment
stateful
controller or
set 跟
stateful set
deployment 他
controller.
们是比较 generic，
For
他们是很 Kubernetes 导向的，但
deployment
是你
and
可以自己
stateful
写一个
set, they are
controller，
quite
然后那个
Kubernetes
controller 呢
oriented.
可以
They are
你
quite
自己去
genetic,
定义说
Kubernetes genetic, but for this controller, you could
要做
define
什么事。
by yourself what you
比如
want
说
it to
呢，
do. For
比如
example,
说像现在有比如说你用一个 etcd 的
for example,
cluster，
now you
那你
have
可
an
能每次你 scale up
LCD cluster,
的
and
时
every
候，你
time
要
when
做
you
哪些
scale
事？
up,
比如说
what
我
you
要
need to do.
先起这个
For
东西过去，
example, I needed to
或者是我现在坏掉了，我要怎么failover 之类的，
well,
然后
it
那
is
些
broken now, and
logic
how will
都
that
会在
fail over, and
controller
all the
里面。
logic could be
然后
written
呢
into the controller.
controller 它做的事就
And
是
for the
你就是送一
controller,
个
it is to
送一个类似 deployment
you
的
can send
一
a
个 custom resource， 但是它是
deployment
你自己
customer
定义
resource
的
similar to
resource
deployment,
之后
but it is self-defined by you.
etcd
For example, it is
cluster
SCD
resource， 那我
cluster
就在里面
resource,
写说
and you can
replicas 是多少
write in
叫
it
什么，你就自
your
己定义
replica
你想
set.
要写哪
to just define all the information you want, all the parameters that could be configured by the users. And in your controller, you could write in, like, I see the resource data is generated and what I should do. So in your case, your app is named, for example,
比如说 WordPress 好了，
WordPress.
假设它是一个 WordPress， 然后我就可以说
Just let's assume
我
it's a
看到这个
WordPress.
WordPress，
And
然
now
后
I
它
have
的
this
spec 是
WordPress,
写的什么，
and in
然后
its
里
spec, what
面
is
spec
written,
里面还可以写说
and then
顺
maybe
序
in the specs you could clarify the order 1, 2, number 1, number 2, and your controller could be upgraded according to this order, or you could create different resources.
在我们组内的话呢，有
Well,
很多的讨论。
in our group, we have quite loads of discussion about doing our own application management internally, and whether we should use Helm for a template or use operator. But while you mentioned Helm is going to be transferred to application CRD with its own controller, so it seems like Helm based on template, its implementation will be more and more similar to an operator.
不太一样。
Did I understand right?
这
Well,
operator
they are
呢
still
比较像是
kind of
说
different because for an operator, it is more like
把这个只跟这个 app 有关的那些 business logic 全部写到
write all the business logic only related to this project to the controller. So for the operator, it is just like old Kubernetes with a controller concept plus
跟这个应用程序完全直接相关的，
a logic which is highly relevant to this application, but it doesn't mean all things using a controller is named operator. Well, for Helm,
你可以 specify， 你
it
可以
could
指定说我有哪一些
assign or
哪一
specify
些参数
any
使用者可以换，
parameter which could be
它
configured
是
by the user.
我们说 parameter，
You know the parameterized. It is a parameterized
用
way.
但是呢，如果你要 upgrade 你的，
But if you want to upgrade
如
your
果你要 upgrade 你的app 的话，
app,
可能还是要透过
you
Helm
may
upgrade
need
之类
to
的。
do it through Helm. But if you use
你要
operator,
upgrade 的时候，
maybe when you want to upgrade,
那个你原本送的那个
you are just changing the originally sent custom resource, just like when you are changing the deployment spec.
是很不一样
So
的
they are
手法。
totally
那另外还有另外一
different
种，
in terms of the
除了
approach.
parameterize 之外
Well,
呢，你还可以做
except for the
overlay。
parameterized way, you could also do overlay. For example, today I have a Helm chart,
它只有给我让我改其中某些参数，
and
就是我只有它
I'm required to change part of the parameters.
那我
Some
就只改。
specific parameters should be changed. Then I just change those specific ones. But for example, now we have two teams. For my team, we want to change parameter A, and the other team want to change parameter B. So parameter A and B should both be open for change. And after all this, maybe for this Helm, the changeable parameters would be a lot, would be very long. And another way to do it is through overlay. There is an open source tool, customized, KUSTI or KUSTMIZE. It is the word customized with the first letter C changed to K. So for this overlay, you don't need to specify in advance which parameters should be changed. It's like you have a base parameter, and in the production scenario, you could use the overlay with YAML to assign which fields should be changed.
Then in the testing environment for another team, they have another set of overlay. basically you have multiple measures to parameterize or overlay or use operator to manage your app. Okay, the last 5 minutes. Any other questions? Now the application CID is focused on different resources which is managed by the users themselves. And as I listened to the lecture, Open Service Broker developer has an incubator project in Kubernetes called catalogs. So the components of the application does not swarm all the resources. There might be some hybrid structure. For example, Open Service Broker is used to swarm some third-party resource. So do you have similar directions? You will consider the development as a whole. You mean application CID can be integrated with Open Service Broker? Very good question. We haven't considered it. But we might as well if it's a needed use case. Because according to my understanding, their pain point is that through Open Service Broker to swarm the service. And it's not static but dynamic. Swarm the service in running time, and their pain point is that they cannot bind because in Kubernetes there's not strictly regulated how to do the communication. So they bind the service to the available application just to transmit some parameters like login credentials. Application CRD is more static. The users will completely know what is the status of their application, so they can describe the application. If you would develop a controller, then in runtime, do you like to consider the combination? For example, instance in application broker, send an event to your controller so the application can be connected to your broker. It's quite useful in runtime, and from an applications aspect, people would like to see the instance, especially in terms of emergency, switch the endpoint. It's quite useful. The resource endpoint can be put in the application CRD and used it in a convenient way. I think it's a very good idea. Thank you. Then we have time for the last question. If no, thank you very much for your attention.